Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. Also, for you regular club members, I am doing the private Zoom for you Thursday night, 7:30 Eastern Time. Join me there. Bring your questions. And again, this is the regular club members. I'll get you gold members. We'll do another one the following week. This week, regular club members, because messed up last week with the link. And so it'll be Thursday, 7:30 Eastern Time. Please join me there and look forward to doing this. So, anyways, if you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on that, go from there. So, today, as you can see, I'm in a hotel room. This is not my office, but I'm in a hotel room because I'm at the owners' meeting. So I want to just kind of wrap up with 5 thoughts about what we heard talking to Adam Peters today and just some things you learn from being at the owners' meetings, talking to other people, etc. So let's get to that. Number one, this is the first thing I think is I don't think there's one guy that stands out in terms of the free agent class that they're excited about. Like last year, it was Frankie Louvu, but I do think they feel really good about what they did. Now, of course, you would expect them to say that, right? And I do think that one guy that they are definitely feel really good about because he came up. It wasn't like he was singled out by them, but he definitely came up in the conversation was Javon Kinlaw. And I know a lot of people have wondered about the why 3 years and 45 million. Well, first of all, the first year is only a little over 7 million against the cap. So you can't look at the, oh my God, 15 per year because there's if he plays out and he hits, that's good for them because now you have a guy who's a very affordable defensive tackle, right? And if he doesn't, you're paying 1 year. The second year is 18 million against the cap, and then you can get out of it after that if it doesn't work. So there's really 1 year of a quote unquote gamble. $7 million a year for him is essentially what he got for the Jets last year, and that's certainly more than a doable rate for any team with a guy like that. But I will say they feel really good about Javon Kinlaw. And again, they signed him so they would, but there is a reason why they wanted to bring him here. And again, I always point out Adam Peters had him in San Francisco. Gerald Tapp knows him well because he coached him there. And then Dan Quinn basically cut his teeth coaching defensive linemen. So he knows what he's looking for and what they want. And so just a few things about him. One of the things that Peter said, he's quote, he's a monster. Just like you look at the guy's just a big dude. So that's one thing. I think one of the things they feel really good about is that he had been hurt earlier in his career, so that they're the feeling by them and what Peters was saying that they feel like the old cliche, his best football is ahead of him. Well, we'll see. But that's why they were willing to give him a 3-year deal because they do feel like he's an ascending player, and that's one of the things they look at for sure. Um, whether they're right or not, we'll find out. Like we all know what he's done, but they feel because he was hurt that he really is just kind of in the younger stages of his career, rather than being a fully developed player at this point. So that's one of the things that they're very excited about for sure. And then as far as where he's going to play, it would be mostly in the interior. As even Adam Peters said, and he said, he kind of looked at Sam Forty, he said he won't be living on the edge. So, and he kind of made a joke to Sam about, do you know what song that is? Of course, it's an Aerosmith song. But the point is, he is an interior guy. So there was some thought by myself, by some others, would they use him a lot at end? Now, he does have a lot of flexibility. Even with the Jets, they would sometimes put him out at end in certain situations, like or over the tackle. But mostly he's going to be an interior guy. They like the strength that he has inside. So there you go. But that is a guy they feel really good about. And I also think just in general with that defensive front, 1 through 8 or 1 through 9, however many they keep, they feel really good about the depth they have there, better than what they had last year for sure. Just a lot deeper, and they know that eventually somebody good will be cut. And that's essentially what you want, right? You want to have people who are good that you have to cut. Not you make a mistake, but you got like, we really like this guy, but there's just no spot for him. Now, of course, you have the practice squad, et cetera, but that's down the road. Point is, they feel really good about the depth they had and the versatility they have. That's something we've talked a lot about, and it's something I've told you about before, that's how they feel about this class, especially the defensive linemen. But it is something that's worth noting again, because that is something that will come up And we'll talk to Dan Quinn tomorrow, and I'm sure that will come up tomorrow about one of the things that he likes about this group. And then again, the versatility, they do have the option, and it also taps into what they can do in the draft, but I'll get to that in a minute. And then the other thing they really like about Kinlaw is that the feeling is that he's very hungry to prove what he can do and to show like he hasn't had the career he's wanted so far. And he's clearly heard some of the talk about the contract that he was given. So they feel like he's very hungry to prove this. And that has really, I think, excited them as well, that he has that kind of attitude or mindset. And listen, I've covered guys that have come in here and said, oh, I want to prove this. And they don't really work that way. I think the good thing for them is they know who this guy is. Like there are some other guys they signed and you find out later they're just not a worker. Well, they don't have the relationship with this guy. They just wanted the guy because he's a big name, whatever it was. They like how he fits in here. So um, anyway, just that's number one. Number two, I think they really want to keep Terry McLaurin around for a while, and that's clearly because that came up in the discussion with Peters as well. McLaurin is up for an extension this offseason, right? And I've told you before, like that kind of stuff typically gets done after the free agency period when you know how your money is allocated now and in the future and how you can structure things. So it just makes sense to wait. And well, to a degree, because of course, if you do it early, then maybe you get ahead of the curve with that receiver position. But in this case, it makes sense to get one done now because you don't want to have McLaurin going into the final years of his deal with having just acquired Deebo Samuel, who's obviously going to count over about 17.5 against the cap. You don't, and with his guarantee money, you don't want to have a situation. You don't want to have a situation where you have a few guys kind of trying to listen, man. They need numbers. So when you're out there, you want to have guys who are taken care of as well. So it's a good mix to have if you have a guy taking care of another guy trying to get stuff that it reduces some of that pressure. Like I got to get mine to get my numbers to get that contract. Um, they also want to keep him because they really like him. So, anyways, I think you'll like this. I want to play this. This is what Peters told us at the owners' meetings about the McLaurin situation.
Yeah, I think. I mean, short answer is we want to make Terry commander for a long time. He's a great commander. He got better and better as the season went on, not only as a player but as a leader. It was really impressive to see him grow so much. When you think of Terry as this, pristine, polished player, but then he got even better. So it's really cool. Everybody can get better. Even the great ones. So. But we've had talks with Terry's representation, and I think just like any talks we'll have, those will stay in house. But it's been really positive.
The addition.
So there you go. So they want to keep him. They know his importance here, and I think everybody knows his importance here. And then the way he meshed with Jayden Daniels, and just the explosiveness that he can bring, and then if you can help also add more around him, and that's we'll get to that in a minute as well. So and there you go. Here's number three. The addition of Deebo Samuel and Larry Tunsil, certainly they feel like they have helped change that offense and helped it grow. And I go back to the whole fit and the knowledge of guys, and they know Deebo very well. And one of the things that Peter said is I've seen him take over games and it's infectious. So that's the kind of stuff that they're looking for from Deebo Samuel is to do. You don't have to have 1,700 yards from scrimmage to have the impact that they feel he can have. For sure. Listen, if you get into that 800 to 1,000 range, I think that's still a pretty good impact for how they would probably use him. If you end up getting another dynamic running back, you don't necessarily have to have Deebo lining up in the backfield. You can do that, of course. That's one of the benefits of having him, but you don't have to have him carrying the ball more than a couple times. So we're not looking at having some monster. You don't need to have him have that 1,700 type yard year to get it. And I think that's one of the things. And as Peter said, it was not a huge cost. So to them, it was kind of a no-brainer. But he said, and his quote was, "We got a playmaker," and there you go. So, and the other part of that is they really like Cliff Kingsbury, of course, as an offensive coordinator. They feel obviously he's very creative, and so he's gonna find ways to get him the ball for sure in different ways. But if you add another dynamic player on that offense, be it another receiver or a running back, and either one would be okay because either one adds another element of that to the offense. I personally, to be honest, like with the running back, I think it just kind of balances the where you have those dynamic athletes. But having said that, you get a guy with speed who can go get the ball down the field. I mean, who wouldn't sign up for that, right? So I think it's just about getting another guy there and making this offense even more dangerous and having a quarterback who can do it. And then, of course, adding Laramie Tunsil, the left tackle. And so that was the other question. And one of the things that Peters talked about is guys like that don't come on the market very often. There was nothing in free agency that was going to be better than him. And some of the better guys in free agency, Ronnie Stanley, um, certainly among them, were taken off the market before the market even opened. So you couldn't rely on that. So to go out and get him, that's what they wanted to do. And they do have some knowledge about him, and they've really like him. I personally heard some really good things about him, just how he is with other guys in the locker room as a worker, etc. He's a guy that he wants to play football. He's not into a lot of other things. So I think he'll be a good fit here for how they want to have that locker room go. And I think we've talked about this before. He wasn't necessarily considered a leader in Houston, more so by example. Nothing wrong with that. And I think that is okay with what this team needs. Like Houston may have needed something different from him. This team does not need. And again, in Houston, it was a lot about contracts and paying guys coming up and not wanting to then add to it with him that made him available. So that's what they did. And of course, as Peter said, with the 29th pick, there's no sure thing that a tackle is even going to be there, and B, that it would be a guy who would work out. They went out and got a sure thing with Laramie Tunsil for a few picks. And as it was brought up, Ben Standig asked Peters about the philosophy of, hey, you want to build through the draft, but you're trading away a lot of these picks. And one thing that they will point out, and I've talked about this before, is they had 9 rookies from the draft class make it last year, and then plus 2 undrafted free agents, one of whom, Tyler Owens, they're pretty excited about how he could develop and the versatility he has, whether it's as a starter, as a backup down the road. They feel like he can keep developing. So you have potentially 11 guys from that year who will still be on the roster this year in some fashion. So that's a good thing. But I think one of the things because again, it's Lattimore, it's Debo, and now it's Tunsil. And for Peters, it was simply they got in his mind, a premier corner, premier receiver, premier left tackle. So see how it plays out. But that's why they felt comfortable doing that, knowing that what they gave up, and still knowing how they want to build through the draft, but also knowing that in exchange for the assets they had in the draft, that they did end up with what they feel were guys who are going to help them this year and potentially for a few years down the road. I would also not assume that they're going to only end up with 5 picks in this draft. It's way too early to know what's going to happen, but there's no doubt in my mind that that I could see them making a move with these picks. And even Peter said that he could see that happening too, one way or another. Could be up, could be down. We'll see. But I do think that that's something that would, I'm not assuming they just stay with 5. But I think there is some excitement about when you look at how can the roster improve without adding 8 more rookies from the draft class. Well, you do have multiple players from last year's class who could start to maybe ascend a little bit more this year. Jordan McGee. Does Dominique Hampton become more of a contributor because they clearly like some of those skills that they moved him up into linebacker last year, and I think they kind of always saw him that way. He's got the size, he can move a little bit, he can cover tight ends. So I think that's something that was also, when you factor in some of the young players, factor those guys in too, because I think their development will also help. It just makes them stronger if they develop. Again, because just because you're high on a guy after year 1 doesn't mean they go somewhere in year 2. They've got to take that jump. How does that go? And I think McGee is the one for sure to watch. In addition to guys like Johnny Newton, I think, we all know him. The guy played a lot last year, but the other guys who could help bolster or strengthen the roster are guys like Hampton, Owens, McGee, young guys who could ascend to primary key roles, whether as backups, special teams players, etc. That could certainly be a difference for them too. And so we'll see how it goes, but that's part of what. But I think that's also partly why they felt comfortable giving up some more of those picks for sure to add guys as Peter said, at premium position. So, and then number 4, I think Jayden nobody's worried about him. I don't think anybody's worried about how Jayden Daniels is going to do in year two. And this is, I think some people get frustrated with talking about like sophomore slump. I'm not even talking about sophomore slump. All I talk about is clearly defenses will try to figure him out. Clearly, Washington will figure out what defenses might do with him, and then he'll adjust on his own as well. I think a couple of things to keep in mind here when and this is a topic I've been asking guys like, how do you help a guy improve or just build on his successful year, right? And listen, every year is different. They may end up facing better defenses this year than they did last year. Doesn't mean he's gotten worse. It just means there's more of a challenge, but that's why you add around him. The offense is already better than it was last year simply because you've probably strengthened your line. You've with Tunsil and then wherever you put Coleman. And then you also added a receiver in Deebo Samuel, who's better than what you had in that role last year. And then whatever you get in the draft, who I do think they'll find somebody in the draft that will help him and then help the offense evolve, not just Daniels. Daniels is going to be fine. And I think that's one of the things when you talk to guys in the league, like nobody's worried about like, oh, the league's going to figure him out. That's not who he is. And there's a couple of reasons. One, his own style of play. I mean, he can run. He's a good processor in the pocket. And I had one executive told me that watching him in college, like he improved as much as any prospect that he had covered, scouted in a long time, simply because of the jump he made while at LSU, and that spoke to the work he put in that they know he'll do in the NFL. And so I think that's how you help a guy. That's how a guy grows and evolves, and how a team can help him is getting more talent around him. And then also, as other coaches said, like Cliff Kingsbury is a really good coach. So they know what he does. They know what Daniels does well. Daniels knows what he does well. Some of the ways you can also evolve is, protect yourself a little bit more, eyes upfield when he's starting to scramble. He did a good job with that as he went throughout the season. Of course, you can get a little bit better there. But when you look at like, I don't know what teams can really do to say, oh, we can take this away and can't do this. I don't think he's that kind of a guy. Like you may have success against him at times, but I don't think teams are ever going to really necessarily like, oh, he's going to keep getting better. So, anyways, there you go. But that's the general feeling that I got from talking to people here. And number five, I think they can go anywhere in this draft, and I think they like that they can go anywhere. One of the things they wanted to do, and Peters, said this too, during our little talk with him, is that they can now go anywhere in the draft. And I don't think it's just blowing smoke with that, because there are definitely times where teams say that, and they end up not doing it because they have to feel like, oh, we can go anywhere, but privately they know like we need a tackle, we've got to get a tackle here. So while they may espouse the be the best player available theory, they don't always follow it. But in this case, I definitely think they will follow that, because when you look at like the way they've strengthened their defensive line, they do not have they don't I don't think they feel like they have to get an impact guy at that spot. So you can go out if you want to wait to the second round to get a defensive end, to get maybe Oladeju from UCLA because he'll be there in the second possibly. Then you can wait, or another guy too, right? You can't just wait for one guy, because that one guy could go anywhere. But if you feel like, okay, you don't have to take the defensive end at 29 because you've taken care of that D line. Now, do you have a young pass rusher you need to develop? No, I think it'd be wise to get one, but you don't have to force one at 29. I think that's where they feel like they made the mark in free agency. Is they took care of, you don't have to go get a left tackle you don't have to get one because you got one. Do you have to get an offensive lineman there? No, because they strengthened their line, not just with him, but moving Brandon Coleman. Could you take a running back there if you really like one? Sure. So I think there's a lot of ways they could go, which receiver, like what if one of those guys falls there, but you get stuck with a defensive end, then maybe you miss a guy who's just going to help your team more, right? So I think that's one of the things they feel really good about what they did in free agency is they filled holes and needs. And this is one of the things that Peter's always talked about: fill the needs through free agency, build the roster, strengthen the roster through the draft. And so if that class last year keeps ascending, that will help. And then whatever you add first, second, fourth rounds, like that those guys can be instant contributors as well. And that would be good for them. So, and Peter, of course, like he said about the draft, like they could trade up, they could trade back. Well, of course, everything's on the table, right? But somebody did ask him about, basically trading another pick away, and it's like he doesn't see that. He goes, that's not their preference. So that I think, clearly Trey Hendrickson is still out there, all that. I just the way I see that situation is like He wants to get paid, and I think that's the primary focus for him. And if Cincinnati, I think I could see Cincinnati, they're going to ask a lot now because you should. Like, you don't, why? Because they don't really want to trade him. So if that's the case, you're going to wait as long as you can to see where's he really at with his desire to be traded. So that could mean during the season. But the bottom line is it's just really, really hard to see. And it's not really on my radar at this point to really cover, but I do think because it's a topic here. But Hendrickson, I think the Bengals are committed to seeing what's his commitment level to wanting to be out, and could they get something done with him? So anyways, but I think this team is fine with what they have. You can certainly add more to it, whether it's first round, second round. I think you can get a guy along the defensive line where if you say, like, again, if it's just an edge rusher that you want to develop into a run stopper as well, you have the time to do that because you don't need him to come in and be a 3-down defensive end. You can get a guy who can come in. It's like, okay, so-and-so, you rush the passer. This is what we want you to do, and we're going to use you in this role. And then others can play the run and worry about those rundowns. But just get someone in there who adds to the versatility of that front, whether it's in the first round, second round, whatever. Corner, you put corner on that list too, right? So because there are definitely guys that they could look at that spot as well. So, but the bottom line is free agency really kind of help them look at how they want to look at the draft, which is you don't have to get a particular spot at 29. You can get what you want and then keep building your roster. So anyways, folks, that's my little report from here from Palm Beach. Appreciate you tuning in. I will be back. I'll be back tomorrow again with another episode. I'll be back on, what is it? I guess we'll talk to Dan Quinn on Tuesday morning at in Palm Beach at the Breakers Hotel. So I'll have another update later in the day. And so, folks, and I'll probably be out Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. So I'll talk to you next time. And you you regular club members, don't forget 7:30 Eastern time Thursday night. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you later.